Okay, so yeah, welcome, croeso, everybody. Croeso is welcome in Welsh, in Cymraeg, my language that I don't know fluently, but I'm bringing into my life a lot more. And thank you all for being here, being curious, wanting to discover the depths of this, yeah, wonderful, magical, wholesome online space that we've created over the past 5 or 6 months. And the Mystic Cave as a whole is a lot more to me and us creators than what we've brought to you guys within the past few weeks of launching this. We've all, as creators, got to know each other. Some of us hadn't even heard each other's names before, so it's been a really lovely online community. And yeah, just so grateful for those of you who have got yourself into the cave. And I know some of you have already started exploring the offerings in there. And the way that this gathering is going to go and the intention is actually simply sharing, learning, and ceremony through sharing and learning from each other. So we have got a little um, yeah, we've got a timeline as to how things are going to go. But there's no super strict limit. If one of us as creators feels like we need a few more moments, that's fine because there is actually some extra time. And that is going to be a question and answer for those of us who are still here at the end to share, ask any of the creators questions. So I recommend if a question comes to your mind, then just pop it into the chat um, aimed at the like the speaker here that it would that is aimed for basically. So yeah, I'm gonna start this off just by talking about like what is this time that we're in right now, like outside of looking at the ancestral traditions and the history of the lands that the Mystic Cave is focused on. So, you know, beyond the Celtic and Gaelic lineages and traditions and the land here, what is this time that we're in? So you can see this season, the start of this season, honored and celebrated by people all over the world for various different reasons. And it is because of the cosmic clock, that rhythm that we're all dancing in, regardless of whether we pay attention to it or whether our culture pays attention to it or not. And what makes this gathering special is that we are all choosing to pay attention once more and we're paying attention for many of us, reasons that we're not entirely fully sure of yet, but there is a recognition and a remembering that we're a part of something that is far bigger than us, but it is so totally that which makes us who we are. And this is the gathering is called the Samhain ceremony or the Samhain gathering because this is the traditional festival in Ireland and Scotland that is known across the world. And it is an entrance back into honoring and celebrating this time in community. It is, this culture is something that Sam here and Tara are going to be talking about from the Scottish and Irish project perspectives in a minute. But I'm from Wales, and our celebration of this time is called Calan Gaeaf or Nos Calan Gaeaf, and it's just gone. So all we know of this celebration here is that it's celebrated on the 31st of October, like Halloween, and it is celebrated on the 1st of November. So on the 31st of October, we've got something called Nos Calan Gaeaf, which is the night before the first day of winter, the night before winter, and we've got Calan Gaeaf, which is the first day of winter. When it comes to the night before winter begins, we actually have three of these days throughout the year, and they're called the Ysbryd Nos, and another is Calan Mai, and I like to focus on Calan Mai and Nos Calan Gaeaf because they are astronomically potent times. So here within this time, it was really actually beautifully synchronistic that the Mystic Cave was the launch was ending just before the 1st of November, which was the new moon. And we will go into why that's special in a minute when Sam talks on this. But with the Espridnos, with the Espridnos, these spirit nights throughout the year, there are many other very potent and liminal times throughout the year. These are just ones that we know our ancestors honored and celebrated. And there are so many reasons as to why that is. But my piece here is to talk about what is the reason that we are here today? Like, what is the reason that you are wanting to return to just even simply recognizing like what is really happening here. And one reason that many of us don't in our society and our culture is because we are not in relationship with like where our food comes from. We're not in relationship with where our water comes from. Everything is on tap, excuse the pun. So there isn't much of a reason for us to really have to go into and understand what is happening on Earth, what is happening with the land around us. There might be some farmers here or people who live in a rural countryside where, it's a lot more apparent to you because you're seeing how the land is transforming and you're seeing how the community is transforming. But I'm from a city, I'm from the capital city in Wales. So for me, I've never really known or recognized that shift in seasons. Um, Other than noticing the changing of the leaves and the celebrations coming along and the music in the shops and the capitalist understanding of what these seasons mean, right? So other than that, the food was the same. I could go into Tesco's or I could go into a supermarket and I could like buy the same thing every day. It didn't matter what time of the year. And there's a real big disconnect with that. Um, so us coming here to recognize, this time now is truly recognizing the rhythm that we're on is the rhythm of how the earth feeds itself and how the world in the different areas, but here in the north, how autumn is so bright, but it is a part of rebirth. It is a part of death. It is about a part of the process of bringing life back to feed us again in the next seasons in the springtime. And really, this honoring for me of this time is like, yeah, just like really being grateful for that which the earth has brought me over the summer. And I try to, as much as possible, eat as local and as organic as possible. But it's just, we can't be perfect in this world. And I think just as long as we're wanting to belong and we're wanting to remember, that's what really matters. So, in some parts of the world, ancestral recognition is also an important part of this time period. And this is because, so I actually got a really strong message when I went into the woods a few days ago. And I went to speak to the trees because within the Welsh tradition, and from what I know, the traditions all over the world, is if you're wanting to commune and work with spirits at this time, don't go working with spirits that you are unfamiliar with. So, but it is also a time where we can make use of connecting to the various realms. So for me, I was called to work with the tree spirits and go into the woods. And I just had this message that was, the reason that we really work with our ancestors at this time is because we can trust them, especially when it comes to our close ancestors, our grandparents, our great grandparents, because they have our best interest at heart. So we can really make use of this time to seek guidance from them. Um, while also recognizing it's probably not the best time to go to a graveyard and work with a Ouija board. But, some people are quite, into that. So I'm not saying what not to do and what to do, but there are, traditions and sort of rules for this time throughout all cultures, throughout history for a reason. So I like to listen to them and work with what we know. So yeah, that's my piece. And I just wanted to speak on one of the traditions that that's a part of Kalangaya really spoke to me when um I went to my first Kalangaya ceremony, and that was to speak out the name of a past loved one and speak it aloud. So at the end of this, I'm going to call us and introduce, well, bring us to do this. And it's not something that we're going to do out loud, but it's going to be after the end of this call if anyone would like to participate in that. And yeah, because this is a very deep time we're all in on Earth. And I'm really, yeah, just grateful for all of you wanting to join in. This is really special. We're all very brave souls for wanting to dive into this once again. So I'm going to bring now Sam into this. And yeah, Sam, go for it. Go. Sam's going to be opening the circle this evening. So yeah, hey Sam.
Hello there. So, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world, and Fáilte, croeso, and welcome. So, if you have a candle handy anywhere nearby, that would be a great thing to have, because in a few moments we will light the candle to create a symbolic Samhain fire that will unite us wherever we might be in the world. But before I do that, and before I open the sacred space, I'd like to just briefly explain the sacred cosmology that you're going to hear me calling in, because it might not be what you're used to hearing, the usual four elements and so on. So the cosmology I'm using comes from the old Irish myth, the settling of the manor at Tara. And in the story, four directions and the center are given specific attributes rather than elemental correspondences. And it's around this Irish model then that the opening ceremony is based, and indeed actually all the work that I do, and it's proved immensely powerful. And we know that this story is at least 1500 years old, but it may actually be much, much older. So if you have a candle, I would invite you now to light it. And just, if you feel so moved, just to close your eyes and just hear the words. To the spirits of the west, west wind, place of knowledge and foundation, of teaching and wise counsel, place of the ancestors and the other world, time of the setting sun and the waning moon, time of autumn, on the earth and in human life, we honor and welcome you and invite you to hold the power of the West and protect this space. And to the spirits of the north wind, place of battle and conflict, of destruction and creation, death and rebirth, time of Samhain, the midnight sun and the new moon, time of winter and death on the earth and in human life. We honor and welcome you and invite you to hold the power of the north and protect this space. And to the spirits of the east wind, place of prosperity and hospitality, of hearth and home, of new life and new beginnings, time of spring, the rising sun and the waxing moon, time of rebirth and awakening on the earth and in human life, we honor and welcome you and invite you to hold the power of the East and protect this space. To the spirits of the south and south wind, place of music and poetic art, of strength and fertility, and of happiness and passion, time of Bealtaine, the midday sun and the full moon, time of full bloom on the earth and in human life, we honor and welcome you and invite you to hold the power of the south and protect this space. And to the great center, place of sovereignty and stability, of dignity and primacy, where we find balance and a state of inner peace, where the forces of the four directions exist in perfect unity. We invoke, honor, and welcome this within ourselves, holding the power of our own sovereignty that none may destroy. And we honor the sky above and the earth below, recognizing the sacred relationship between us. And to the ancestors of these lands and all tribes and clans that followed, we honor you, awaken you, and seek your blessing and protection. Oh, okay. So tonight, for my little stint, I'm going to share a wee bit about Samhain in Scotland as it exists in the folklore, what records we have. So we in the Mystic Cave have hopefully brought an understanding to you that the so-called Celtic festivals were not the same island-wide. So this is also true for different parts of Scotland, for example. People celebrated in many different ways. So there was no sort of single overarching way of celebrating Samhain. So those of you that bought the bundle will have access to the document that I created on Samhain in Scotland, which gives a general overview. But for those who are just here for the gathering, I'm going to offer a brief summary of the celebrations. So Samhain marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter in Scotland. And it's rooted in the Gaelic and Gallic traditions. And Samhain was historically a time for slaughter, for honouring ancestors and divining the future. So today, we know Samhain has a fixed date in neo-pagan circles, but that wasn't always the case, especially before the current Gregorian calendar was established in Britain in 1752. So tonight you'll hear different perspectives on the timing of Samhain, but according to the surviving Scottish folklore, Samhain began on the night of the new moon, specifically the second new moon after the autumnal equinox. And this lunar Samhain timing correlates to information that has been turned up in the Iron Age Collini calendar, which marked the new moon as the point of both ending and beginnings of cycles. And summer's end is noted as coinciding with the new moon. So it's interesting to me too that Indo-European cultures from which we descend also celebrated summer's end on the night of the new moon, and we see it in surviving Hindu festivals such as Diwali. So my colleague Tara Brading tonight, however, will shortly show us that the solar positioning, so that is the midpoint between the autumnal equinox and winter solstice, is evidenced for Samhain in Ireland. So I was thinking about this, and I wondered, is it possible to reconcile these different pieces of evidence? And I thought, well, we might be able to, if we remember that these festivals were historically not a one-night only affair. So the surviving mythology of Ireland in particular tells us that feast celebrations would go on for days and sometimes up to a week. So therefore, it might be reasonable to assume that Samhain could have begun on the night of the new moon and progressed and perhaps reaching a climax or a crescendo at the midpoint that Tara is going to explain to us shortly. And of course, that's only conjecture, but, it makes sense to me. But regardless of when we choose to celebrate, Samhain represents the turning of the wheel, symbolizing that transition from the dark half to the light half, the light half to the dark half of the year, sorry. And the occasion brought communities together for feasts, bonfires, and various forms of divination, usually, always aimed at seeking guidance for the year ahead. So during Samhain, the Scots believed that the barrier between the physical and spirit realms was at its most malleable, making it easier to communicate with the deceased and other supernatural beings. So this theme of blurred boundaries meant that rituals honoring the dead were central. So food offerings were left outside to welcome the spirits, and many households kept their doors slightly open, inviting these visitors from the spirit realm in the hopes of receiving their blessings and protection. So, a popular Samhain custom in Scotland was guising, which is short for disguising, where people, and usually children, would dress up in costumes and go door to door, and then would perform a verse, a song, or a trick in exchange for money or food. So the practice was believed to confuse or placate the spirits and is considered the precursor to the modern trick or treating traditions that we see in Halloween celebrations today. Guising was rooted in the belief that by disguising oneself, we could blend in or avoid malevolent spirits that roamed during Samhain due to the thinning of the barrier between worlds. And death, of course, arrived in a literal sense too, as weaker animals were slaughtered for food over that period. And their remains, anything that couldn't be put to use, were put into the fires to avoid putrefaction and disease spread among the community. So bonfires, therefore, were a significant part of the Samhain celebration. They were built with materials like ferns and tar barrels, and these fires illuminated entire districts, creating this sort of picturesque protective display on the hills against darker forces. And people would walk between, around, or leap over, or drive cattle between the bonfires as a ritual for purification and good fortune. And this practice emphasized the importance of community as neighbors joined forces to build the bonfires and then enjoy the spectacle. So Samhain was also a time for divination, and especially around themes of love and marriage. And Scottish customs included egg white divination, where a dropped egg white in a glass of water could predict the size of your family, how many children you have based on the way that the egg white moved in the water. Or there could be nut divination, where burning hazelnuts represented romantic compatibility based on how they burned, so whether they popped together, whether they blew apart. Other games involved crowdie, a milk and grain dish that had a ring hidden inside it, and whoever found it would be the one who would be marrying next. And there were lots of different types of apple divination, where apples were bobbed for, peeled, or cut into pieces to reveal future lovers. And Scotland's connection to nature was really evident in the special roles of plants like juniper, hemp, and kale. So juniper was a plant of strong purification, burned in sailing rites, and the smoke was believed to keep evil spirits away. And juniper would be burnt in hearths in huge quantities, and the people inside the house were expected just to sit inside there for as long as humanly possible, breathing in the smoke as an act of purification. The smoke also permeated the thatched roofs and took care of any pests that might be lurking in there, so there was a practical use to it. Young women used hemp seeds in incantations to summon visions of future husbands, while kale, secretly pulled from a neighbour's garden, were studied for their qualities to reveal the personality traits of future wives and husbands. And interesting to me, the kale was also placed under the pillow to induce prophetic dreaming. So these are just a few examples of Scottish practices, and there's many, many more in the recorded folklore. But what about me? What does Samhain mean to me personally? For me, it's about moving into a period of deep introspection, a time when I meditate on some of the maybe more difficult things, like the realities of my own death, for example, and naturally thinking about those who've gone before. It becomes a celebration of their memory, but also a celebration of their continuing life in the unseen realms. And I also use the time to connect deeply with the feminine spirit of winter, of Scotland and Ireland, the Cailleach Mhuir, the Blue Hag. And she's a spirit ally that I work closely with from Samhain through to spring. So just as nature retreats and prepares for winter, this is the time of year when I pause and reflect on where I've been, what I've achieved, and what lies ahead and what I want to accomplish in the following year. So Samhain for me is a time to honor the past, cherish the present, and look to the future, at the same time acknowledging the natural and inevitable flow of life and death. So that's it from me. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Sam. It's so interesting how, yeah, how there are so many crossovers and like it's
Mm-hmm.
not obvious. I mean, we're all pretty close looking at the traditions we're talking about today. But yeah, like with the apple tradition that you spoke of was interesting because like we would like do bobbing apples when we were younger, and I had no idea that it was an ancient old tradition, in Wales. It was that you'd have like well, what I've read is that the women would bob the apples, and the first woman to get an apple would be the one that would be the first wed next year. And I think, like, the way I see it is there would be a row of like sort of barrels and a load of apples, and then a load of women, and then like all the men behind and the kids and everyone. You're like, oh, like really exciting, just sort of like dark night, firelit. And yeah, a lot of celebration, a lot of laughter, and a lot of fun. So, yeah, there's many similarities. And I'm sure when Tara comes in to chat about it as well, we will find out about that. And then when Anwin, who wasn't able to introduce herself at the beginning, comes in, she's going to talk a little bit about what it's like today in Glastonbury. So, yeah, before that, we're going to move on to Mickey, aka the Liminal Witch. And I will first start off by saying that me and Mickey know each other in person. We're good friends. We've been really good friends for like almost 10 years now. And yeah, Mickey is gonna talk about the liminal period and what that means. So yeah, welcome in, Mick.
Hello, hello. Um, so liminality. I always know what to say, but I never know how to start it. But I think this is the best way. I just want all of you to just take not even a minute, not even 30 seconds, to just hold the word liminal in your head and ask yourself, what does it mean? It could just be a word, it could just be a sentence. You could get a color association with it, but just what does the word mean to you? At this point, there's no right or wrong answer for that. It's just what is your understanding of the word? Because liminality is a very, very deep topic, which we all practice as cunning folk and witches and priests and priestesses and wizards, but we don't all know just how deep it is. So, just to go further into that, the Oxford Dictionary definition of liminal means characterized by being on a boundary or a threshold, especially by being transitional or between two states or situations, etc. So the term liminality very much is describing change and transition and boundaries and thresholds. And during the time of Samhain and Norse Galan Gaeaf and all of these other celebrations, it is believed across so many different cultures that the veil is at its thinnest during this time. And when you think of the veil, some people will think of it as a literal boundary. They will think of it as a barrier. They will think of it as this thing that sort of exists and disappears or thins and grows stronger throughout the year. But very recently, actually, I've been having some insights while doing just some general liminal work and meditation that the veil is never fully closed, nor is it ever fully open. It ebbs and it flows. I see the veil as being this living, breathing entity, this liminal entity between our worlds that ebbs and flows. And sometimes it's stronger, sometimes it's weaker. And during the time of Samhain, it just happens to be weaker, which means that things between the worlds are able to come and go as they please a lot more easily. I think of the veil itself when it's at its thinnest, so on the nights of Samhain and the other Ysbrydnos or the spirit nights, as we say in Wales, like Stal mentioned, they are a time when the spirits are just able to come and go, and when we are able to interact with them more because there's less of that boundary. The liminality comes into play because I see the veil itself as being a liminal space, but on a global scale. So, liminal spaces in general, there's a couple of checklists that you go with to know if something is a liminal space. So you need to find a space where the energy feels a bit off or different. This isn't always malicious. Lots of people think it's scary to be in liminal spaces, but you'd be surprised by how often you find yourself within these spaces when you actually look into it and analyze it. But the energy is usually a bit different. The best way I can describe the energy of liminal spaces, and you'll know the energy, is whenever you visit a cemetery or a graveyard, or you just pass by, and you know that like weird, like heavy but light air that you feel in the cemetery, or there's like this stillness, but it's a very busy stillness and silence almost. It's that sort of feeling. And once you felt that in a cemetery, you can apply that to other liminal spaces. So yeah, maybe not this time of the year because the paranormal activity is a bit more active, and that's a bit intense if you just want to experience the feeling of a liminal space. But when the veil starts to get a bit stronger, go to your local cemetery, go to your local graveyard, and just sit there on a bench just for 5 minutes just to feel the signature of the place. That's a good way to understand what other liminal spaces are like, because you can take how that felt to any other liminal space. Other things to look out for in liminal spaces are transition and change. In the liminal space, the energy and everything around you is constantly flowing, it's constantly changing, it's constantly transitioning from one state to another. So, this is why places like rivers are liminal, riverbanks, beaches, forests, cemeteries, entryways and doorways, and their boundaries and thresholds as well. Like once you say these things a lot, they start to ingrain in you, and it becomes very obvious what a liminal space is and what it isn't. What's not so obvious though is non-physical liminal spaces, because they exist in mass amounts all over the place. So we've all experienced these different things at different points in our lives, and they often come with weird or strange or spooky connotations depending on each individual experience. So pregnancy is a liminal time, menopause is a liminal time, teenagehood, puberty is a liminal time. They're just some examples of non-physical, but the biggest one that I like to tell people about is travel. Travel is one of the most liminal acts any person can do, and it's not exclusive to gender or race or person. It's very much a universal thing we all do, and it's not just getting on a plane or getting in a car. Sometimes it's as simple as, oh, I want a cup of tea. I'm going to get up from my desk and go to the kitchen to make a cup of tea. Or it's, I've run out of milk. I'm going to go from my house to the shop and get milk. It doesn't always have to be an intense 8-hour travel or like 14 hours across the world. Sometimes it is just a simple 5-minute experience. And when you're in these liminal states and these liminal non-physical and physical points in your life, you're open to more energy, more magic, and more experience, because the energy of the space you're in is constantly flowing. That the power of change, which is something I've struggled with a lot in my life. I've always been very reluctant to go along with change, but it's through liminality I learned to accept it and just how powerful change is, because change in a weird way is kind of alchemy, just generally, if that makes sense. It's transmuting whatever is going on with you or in the space that you're in into something else, and it takes on a different form in loads of different ways. It's really unique to the place and the space that you're in at the time. And applying liminality to this time of the year, it doesn't get more liminal than the veil being thin, really. I mean, we see spirits, we see the fae, like that's another big one in Welsh mythology, and I'm pretty sure in Scottish, but Sam's going to know way more than that than me. But the fae are more apparent at this time of year, because they can just, they can do their thing. They can just come and go as they please. Same as the spirits and the ghosts. for Norse Calan as well. We also have divination. That's another one that is similar to the Scottish celebration of Samhain as well. And it's because all of these things are just within the liminal container, and the liminal container during the most liminal times of year, like Samhain and Beltane and Midsummer, they stretch out to the whole world. And that's why lots of us are more susceptible to things at these times of the year. Um, but a big one about this is I see lots of people who put pressure on themselves to do things, to do rituals, to do spells, whatever it is around this time of year because of that liminality, because the veil is thin. But it is important, and Sam did mention briefly as well that it's not just strictly one day and then bam, it's done. The portal, the veil, it ebbs and flows. Remember, that's a big thing. It's like pulsing, almost breathing. So Samhain goes on for more than just one day. Norse Calan goes on for more than one day, technically, if you look at it from that perspective. And there's so many different dates that are given for this time of the year as well. So if you miss out on the 31st as a way to celebrate it, don't worry. You've got other liminal times of the year, but you can also go out and hunt for liminal spaces yourself as well. You can go and look for liminal pockets in the forest, or you can go to a cemetery, or you can do a ritual in your doorway or on your staircase. But I probably wouldn't recommend that one. Actually, that can be quite messy. But look into liminal spaces using the definition of change, transition, boundary, threshold. Those four words are super, super important when it comes to liminality. And once you really understand liminality as a concept at its base level of that, you're golden. You can find it in anything. It's like I was doing a workshop a few weeks ago about liminal magic, and someone mentioned the next day that backstage of a theater is liminal, and I never thought about it before, which is silly because I used to do performing arts and PA stuff, and I'd never considered, but of course. And that's just get inspired to think of these things, see, and then it ripples into other people and other things, and you'll start picking out on something that's liminal that you never would have considered before. But we all work with the liminal even if we're not aware of it, but once you're aware of it, it's very addictive to keep looking into it. Um, I mean, I think that's it, Stell. I think
Yeah,
just
you just brought up some things for me. They're like really, I think if we were all to come to any paranormal out of this body experiences, like for me anyway, when I look back, they've all been in liminal moments, and I can't list them
yeah.
all now, but my first ever and strongest Fae experience that was apparent right in front of my eyes was when I was 13, a teenager. The time where I've actually had I've heard, what is that, Claire audience. I don't know, it's probably not that, you know what I mean. Was when
Oh
I was
yeah.
walking down the stairs and I heard a party happening in the room next to me in my nan's house that's quite old. And I looked in and yeah, like you're bringing
On
me
the
to
stairs.
realize on the stairs, yeah, you're bringing me to realize like there are liminal experiences that seem to happen in these liminal spaces, and your product in the Mystic Cave is an ebook on more of this. Yeah, more of
Yeah.
this. And then an ebook on protection magic as well, which I think they go hand in hand when you're working with magic and ceremony, especially in liminal places and spaces.
Oh
Protection
God,
is
yeah.
like really, yeah, really necessary. So yeah, thank you, Mickey. Now we're going to go into a liminal space ourselves. So Aaron's gonna pop in here, and Aaron is going to take us on a journey. Aaron, aka the Elven Wizard. So yeah, come on in, Aaron, and yeah, just explain to this gathering what you're gonna be doing.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. So great to be here. And we're going to do a little magical journey into the Mystic Cave. So, this is a guided meditation experience. If you're new to such things, I invite you to just follow along to the best of your ability, sensing, feeling, imagining. This is really an activation of your imagination, which to me is a big part of your magic and your creativity and your ability to connect through these liminal spaces into these realms. So, follow my voice, but go in your own way as you feel inspired and allow your own experience to reveal what is necessary for you. And if you drift off a bit, that's okay too. You're going deeper into the liminal space, and I'll be bringing you back when we're complete. I will be speaking mostly in English, but I will also be bringing through some magical incantations to support your journey, your healing, your connection into the mystic cave. So make yourself comfortable. You can leave your camera on or off, whatever's comfortable for you. And I invite you to get comfortable sitting. You can lay down if you desire, or sit comfortably, closing your eyes and allowing yourself to come into your breath, to deepen and explore the capability of your breath, the breath as the cave within you to take you deeper into the mystery, into the magic. So, first, expanding that cave within you, exploring its depths into your belly, and letting the breath soften and relax the body. Letting the body unravel a bit here, unraveling all the day, all the things that have been happening, unraveling the physicality. Getting comfortable and relaxed in a space to journey. A space to move between here and now into the deeper layers, into the more subtle realms. Letting the spine open, the nervous system to open, and the heart to open, to receive this magic and this gift of this season. Samhain, the gift of your ancestors. And as you relax, begin to visualize, imagine, call forth before you a magical portal, a space to take you beyond this place. A space that you can flow into, your spirit, your essence, can flow beyond this realm of earth, this physical realm, into the spaces in between, through the veil. And let yourself flow into this portal, taking you out of your room, out of your house, wherever you're at. Outside of time and space, into the realms of magic. In this portal opening, bringing you before a beautiful ancient cave entrance of ancient stone, perhaps covered in moss, and ancient symbols. Some symbols perhaps you recognize, maybe some symbols you don't, carved into the stone. Noticing, imagining to the best of your ability this cave that stands before you. And from this cave entrance, a mist begins to form, thickening before you, taking form to 5 guardian spirits. The guardians here that have been holding this container today are here with you to aid you as you need it, to help create a safe space for you to go into your cave. You feel them smile and welcome as they step aside and invite you into the cave. Perhaps you notice some of those symbols on the cave glowing with magic and power. And with a deep breath, you make your way into the dark, mystic cave before you. The guardians step aside, inviting you in. And you go into this cave, dark, yet perhaps there's some light allowing you to see the rock walls, or perhaps you feel the rock walls, noticing if they're wet or dry, noticing if there's any crystals or what type of stone there is. As the cavern takes you down deeper and deeper into the stone, deeper into the darkness. Breathing, curiosity, discovery, exploration of what's possible for you. You hear whispers in the air. And before you, you see a faint firelight come into view, and you make your way towards it. It's light growing stronger, flames flickering, dancing in red and orange and yellow. The whispers calling you to it. You feel your heart calling you to it. Yeah. And you see a fire growing within a great chamber. You enter this chamber and notice more of these ancient symbols upon the cavern walls, shimmering in the firelight. Symbols that past ancestors of many different forms and shapes left here for you to remember the great journey, the great mystery, the great magic, the great connection to it all. You feel their warmth, the magic pulsating. You feel the warmth, the fire, the light flickering around you. And here in this fire, you offer your own prayers, your own gratitudes, your own request for support on your journey. And from within this fire, we call forth our ancestors, ancestors of our human lineage, perhaps the ancestors that we're connected to through our other incarnations or other lives, perhaps the ancestors that are around us connected to the land that we all each walk upon, and perhaps even our ancestors from other dimensions, the Fae, the Elven, the Dragon, the Star. But we are all connected to many realms. So those who are supportive to us, that are here to enhance and enrich our journey, we ask them and we invite them in this cave to bring forth guidance, wisdom, joy, support. to empower us, yeah, lalunde, ringe, atalalande, lalunda, to open our hearts, sabatande, akaikeishu, lalunda, waraunda, lalunda, ye, utalalunda, rauka, rakuaralendra. And I'll give you some time here to enjoy their company and receive what you need. And as you breathe them in, taking a few more moments here with them, celebrating the great journey of life and death, the great gifts that they have given to us, and the great gifts that they receive through us. And if you feel inspired, you might also leave a mark, a symbol upon the cave wall to add to the great story. We give thanks, appreciation to these ancestors that walk with us, watch over us. That flow through the lands around us and flow through our blood and our bones, that pulse with our hearts. Give thanks for all their traditions and their ancient wisdom. give thanks for their presence here with us today in this liminal space between the realms. And we let them, inviting them to fade back through the veil, through the fires, back to their homes, knowing that they're still connected to us as we need them. And we let the firelight begin to dim. The magical pulsations within the symbols begin to dim. And with a deep breath, we say farewell to this mystic cave for now. And take what we have learned here, what we have gathered, what we've been blessed with, and begin to make our journey back out of this cavern. Back up the pathway, thanking the stone for holding the space. The crystals, the rock, perhaps the water that trickles through. As we step higher, floating higher, rising up, coming to emerge, passing the guardians of the cave. And that portal opens. Denandelanindram yefringeranga hyan yabando. Endelangelandram behum yenoiram. Giving again our appreciation and thanks for this mystic cave, our ancestors, and our own spirit and essence, and bravery and courage to walk this journey, to explore these realms. Find our way, we move through, we flow through that portal. Back through time and space, back here, finding our way to our physical vessels, our physical bodies. Flowing back into bringing back with us the gifts, the wisdom, the energies into our body, into our bones, our blood, our organs, our heart, our mind, our spine. Feeling the earth, physical earth beneath us. Letting that magic we gathered flow into our cells so it can radiate into our life, into our community, into this space, and into the seasons ahead of us. And with a few deep breaths as you're ready, slowly awakening, slowly opening your eyes, slowly wiggling your magical fingers and toes. In celebration for life in this wonderful journey we get to explore together. Thank you so much. In honor to share and guide you. I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you, Aaron.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, so just while we're in this moment, I would, just for the people here on this call who haven't got a chance to go into what you're about and your offering, I feel we do have some time. If you could just share,
Mm-hmm.
where you're going after what you're going to do after this call, because this is so important when it comes to bringing this not even ancient practices, but this innate human wisdom and ability to go inwards to the modern world. Like, what are you up to after this call?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the offerings that I have in Mystic Cave for you to check out, if you haven't already, is my Inner Realms Journey meditation adventure experience, where you'll be guided by myself, the Elven Wizard, into the realms to connect with your avatar and travel to different realms on the Tree of Life. And this is based on many different traditions around the world, but also kind of involved through my own creativity to this new experience to help people access their own inner magic and their own lineages and spiritual connection and creativity and bring that to life to really live their life to their fullest magic in their own creativity and their own passion and live with more joy and play and creativity. And I'm starting to bring it into some children's hospitals. And right after this call, I got 45 minutes, so I might have to jump off before it closes. I'm jumping over to give a presentation about it to therapists at, I don't know, 5 to 15 different hospitals across the states here, to get it into hopefully more hospitals and bring this magical experience to hopefully many kids and their families, especially those going through some challenging times at the hospitals. And my secret vision is to turn these hospitals into magical temples of play and fun and healing. So the Inner Realms journey is very akin to what you guys just got to experience, but it's much more elaborate. And there's over 80 meditations. There's all kinds of art projects and writing projects and creative projects and academic projects, and continues to grow. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing to get to share and make this magic more accessible to a lot of people in many different arenas. So that's where I'm going after this.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, when I first heard about your work, I was like, I'd never really heard anything like it. And like you said, like us being brave in this call. And I
Mhm.
mentioned us being brave. Oh, Sally says that she used to be a clown doctor at the hospital, helping transform the place.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah, yeah, because yeah, yeah, but one thing that's we're missing in this day and age is the time to really go inwards. I think
Mm,
especially here in the UK in the winter, it would have been so natural to have, there's not much to do, there's storms outside, there's rain outside, you just need to come in and be in story and imagination. Like we don't have to do it anymore. So like really I love what you're doing because if you're bringing it to people who really, or bringing it to everyone,
mhm,
and everyone really loves magic. The
mhm.
magical fantasy world, I think, as children, and it's like bringing that inner child self out, and it's yeah, we'll be rebellious in our true nature. So
Yeah,
thank you so much, Aaron.
gladly an honor. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them since I'll be probably having to jump off a little bit early.
Yeah, pop any
For me.
questions that you have for Aaron into the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so yeah,
Mhm.
next up we've got Tara coming in to talk about the traditions from England and a little bit from Ireland as well. So yeah, back to the ancestral traditions from these from these Celtic and Gaelic lands in Britain. So hey Tara.
Hi, really good to be here with everyone and honoring the journeys that you just went on into the cave. And I feel called just to burn some Leah loose, some mugwort, just to begin, and really feeling the liminality of the realms that we're traversing through the Samhain portal and the journeys you just went on. So honoring Leah Luce, Sean Maher, Leah Luce, grandmother mugwort. And as I've been listening to everyone and tuning into what I'm going to share, I feel that one of the things I'd love to bring to this call is a real sense of the ancientness of this festival, the truly ancient nature of this festival. So I'm going to begin there. And I'm going to talk about both the ancestral wisdom traditions from Ireland and England, but I'm going to start with Ireland. So, in its most ancient form, Samhain Eve didn't have a fixed date of October 31st, and Sam touched on this earlier. So in Ireland, the agricultural festivals, all 8 of them, are older, much, much older than the Gregorian calendar. And we know this because of 5,000 plus year old passage mounds. And basically, these mounds were built by the Neolithic people of Ireland, the first farmers. And they built these monuments to honor the different positions of the sun and therefore the different seasons of the agricultural year. And there's one particular site called Slieve na Cally, or Loch Crew, which marks the alignment of all 8 festivals. So on Samhain, this sacred alignment happens halfway between autumn equinox and winter solstice. So this year it's happening today, November 6th, and this is when the sun shines into some of Ireland's ancient passage mounds. And so those include the one that I just mentioned, Slieve na Cally. There's a cairn there, a mound called Cairn U. And there's also a prolific cairn that is called the Mound of Hostages, though I don't really like this name. I prefer to call this sacred mound the Womb of Tara, or Chara na Rí, the Womb of Chara na Rí, which is the Irish name for the Hill of Tara. So that's how we know that these alignments and these festivals are very, very ancient. And during this liminal time of Samhain, I really feel the presence of the ancient ancestors. And so I arrive here to give you this wisdom share with my ancestral elders and really feeling them present and honoring them. Yeah, Mila Buihes Shan and share. 1,000 thanks to the old ancestors who can help us with this remembering of the very ancient nature of this festival, and really thinking of those ancient ancestors who lived so closely with the earth. So Samhain means summer's end. And as we've spoken about on this call, it signifies the beginning of winter when the final harvests were traditionally gathered. So as we've been talking about, it's a time when the spirits of the other world and the spirits of the dead walk among us. And it's said that on Samhain Eve in Ireland, every fairy fort is open. So this is, as we've talked about, a really potent time to connect with the spirit realms, the ancestors, and really see Samhain as this doorway into the liminal season. So really reflecting on that theme of liminality, right? I actually feel that Samhain is the doorway into the liminal season, into the season of darkness, when naturally there is this ancient call to go within, to go into the cave, to go into the sacred mounds. So I want to talk a little bit more about these ancient mounds in Ireland. And I think it's really important to understand that these alignments and these mounds were incredibly important to our ancient ancestors because they would have required this incredible community effort to build. And by contrast to their houses, their homes, which were really quite simple, these structures are very complex. And they have these specific alignments, not only with the sun, but with the moon and with the stars and planets and what have you. So they were really so much more than burial mounds. Sometimes people call these mounds burial mounds, which they are on one level, but they're really so much more. They would have been astrological observatories. They were places of ceremony and ritual and funeral rites and seasonal festivals and so on. So they were really a place of communion, communion with the earth, communion with the spirits, the ancestors, and so on. And I'd actually love to show you a picture, and still I think you'll have to give me permission to share. I've just requested that. Okay, great. So this is a photo of the womb at Chara na Rí, which I mentioned. And as you can see, it's very womb-like in nature. So similar to the cave, you know, there are these entry points into the earth, right? And so there's this womb-like energy going into the dark. And the entrances to the mounds are very sort of, they resemble the birth canal, right? So to go in is to be initiated into that energy of womb and tomb and creation. And so these are, again, liminal places where we can really be initiated. And so this place here, Chara na Rí, is very important within the ancient Irish traditions of Samhain. And so there's this sacred mound here, this beloved womb, and there's other sacred sites in the landscape that would have been important. And in Gaelic Ireland, there was a tradition of, and probably more ancient than that too. There was a tradition of lighting great fires during the festivals. And so in Samhain, there's a specific place called the Hill of Clochta, which is where the first Samhain fire would have been lit. And then other fires and other hilltops around would have lit their fires, and it would have spread and spread and spread until there were many fires throughout the landscape. And so the Hill of Clochta is near to Chowrinary, and Chowrinary likely would have been the next place for the fire to have been lit. And Chowrinary is really important because it's the place where the High Kings of Ireland used to rule from. So king of all kings, basically. There are many kings in Ireland, but the High King was the king of kings. And there were some really important rites happening here on Samhain. So these rites were concerning kingship and sovereignty. And I'm going to talk more about this. So this ritual that took place on Samhain here at Chowrinary was called the Banish Riha, the wedding feast of kingship, in which a woman would stand in the place of the sovereignty goddess, the goddess of the land, and give her blessing to the High King. So the High King and the goddess were essentially married ceremonially in these ancient rites. And the king would lay with the goddess, he would sleep with her to seal this promise, this sacred contract, which was a contract for the king to uphold his sacred responsibilities to the land, the people, and the spirit of life. And the woman who stood in the place of the goddess really became this bridge between the land and the other world, between the realm of spirit and society. So we can think of her as a bandri, a priestess, as a mediator of the sacred. And in the ancestral visions and memories that I've had of these rites taking place, there would have been a public ceremony taking place. And then basically the king and the goddess, the king and the bandri, would go into this mound to enact that sacred rite, that union, the sleeping with each other inside of the womb, right? Inside of the darkness of the womb. And similarly, you know, the womb of Tara is similar to the energy of the cave that Erin just guided us into. It's a very magical place where the spirits are very active, right? And it's a place where that union, I feel, really took place. And that's just my own understanding, just to make that clear. But it feels very true for me. Every time I've been to Chowrinary, I feel that and I see the ritual taking place. And because there's this liminality to Samhain, it's really no wonder that these ancient rites of kingship took place during this portal, right? Because the veil between the worlds is very thin. So it was easy for that very, very well-trained bandri to stand in the place of the goddess and channel the energy of the goddess for these rites. So this is the ancient nature of this festival and some of the most ancient sort of wisdom that we have about how our ancestors honored and celebrated this festival in Ireland. And we have less evidence as we go back in time, but we can imagine that even the Neolithic ancestors, the first farmers, were honoring Samhain in some way, though we don't know what they called this festival, how they honored it. We can imagine that they were gathering at these sacred mounds, right, that were aligned with Samhain, the Samhain sunrise. Maybe they were honoring their dead, honoring their ancestors, doing rituals, telling stories around the Samhain fires, doing ceremony, right? Because really tradition and belief is very slow to change through time. It evolves depending on the social context, but the essence of what we honor in more recent times, you know, our recent ancestors, the ways that they celebrated Samhain is probably not that different in certain ways. There's a thread, a core essence that goes all the way back through time. So in more recent times, we have lots of ancestral practices and rituals that are associated with Samhain that have sort of a Christian overlay or a weaving between paganism and Christianity. And there's lots of well-documented folklore and practices in Ireland's National Folklore Collection. And so we have documentation of how our more recent ancestors celebrated. So there are different accounts of people preparing their homes for visiting spirits of ancestors and loved ones. This included the tradition of leaving a bright fire in the hearth with chairs around the fire. The door would be left on the latch, the house would be cleaned, offerings of food and clean water were left out, and sometimes a pipe with tobacco. And there's also a tradition in Ireland of laying what's called the dumb supper at the family table and leaving a seat open for any ancestor or spirit who might drop by to basically eat with the family. And then this extra meal is left outside when the family is finished, as no one living should consume food for the dead. And so there's this theme of feeding the ancestors, which I might speculate is really, really ancient. And we see this tradition of feeding the ancestors in many cultures around the world. And there are also lots of traditions that have to do with the hearth and lighting candles. Candles were placed in the windows or on the wall of cemeteries. And it feels like these practices are an evolution of that older tradition of the community ritual fires and the Samhain fires on Chowrinary and the Hill of Clochta and what have you. So there's this tradition of lighting the fires and the idea that the fires they guide the benevolent spirits through the night. Another ancestral practice from Ireland is divination. And so this is a form of soothsaying or fortune telling. And there's lots of documentation of young women divining who they're going to marry, and mirrors are often used as a form of scrying. And this part of the folk traditions really speaks to me of the magical nature of this festival. And I find it really interesting that young women are often the ones performing this divination magic. And again, it feels like there's this evolution of tradition through time. We have the magical woman, the Bandri, standing in the place of the goddess in the Gaelic era. And then we have sort of that evolution over time with the young women doing folk magic, right, in more recent times. There's a lot more I could share about the traditions of Samhain from Ireland, and I encourage you to watch my Samhain ceremony as part of the Mystic Cave collection if you'd like to learn more about that. So I'm now going to talk about All Hallows Eve, traditions from England, and it was really lovely to see that there are lots of you here from England. And I feel that as people with English ancestry, we often forget that we have our own native traditions, and we tend to look to, our Celtic neighbors for wisdom about these festivals. And so I really like to encourage people with English ancestry to actually look at our own traditions, because we definitely have them, even though they're sometimes not as well known. And so I'm going to be sharing wisdom about All Hallows Eve and All Saints Day, which are Christian festivals, but there is this important weaving together of tradition with roots in our pagan past. And you'll hopefully see that as I'm sharing. So I invite you to pay special attention to the ways in which more modern traditions, like from the Victorian era, for example, actually have connections to our more ancient history, going all the way back to the Anglo-Saxons and even to Celtic Britain. So I'm going to bring us through some of the ancestral traditions, and you'll notice from all of the other shares that there's a lot of similarity between our traditions from England and our Celtic neighbors. So first of all, I want to talk about souling. And this is essentially an early version of trick or treat, which began hundreds of years ago in medieval England, when the poor would go door to door asking for money, apples, ale, and special cakes known as soul cakes. So back then, this tradition was known as souling, and it would take place on All Saints' Day, when Christians would traditionally pray for their loved ones who have passed. And originally, the distribution of soul cakes was encouraged by the church as a way of replacing the ancient pagan practice of leaving food and wine for the wandering spirits. So this is what I mean when I say that there's a weaving between Christianity and paganism. Basically, people continued to celebrate and honor their traditions. It just took a new form, and Christianity kind of extracted from and adopted these more ancient pagan traditions, right? We then have apple bobbing, and this was known as ducking in Northern England, ducking. And this was a popular Halloween game in Britain from the time of the Roman occupation, when two festivals of Roman origin were basically combined with traditional Celtic celebrations. So we have this sort of weaving together again of culture and tradition, which happens a lot in our English traditions, of course, because we as a land have been conquered many different times by different peoples, right? So there's a weaving of ancestral traditions and cultural traditions over time. We then have divination, and fortune telling. And these were really heavily incorporated into Victorian Halloween parties. Halloween parties were very, very popular during the Victorian era. And many of these games focused on love and matchmaking, and it was fashionable to use fortune telling as a way of seeking a spouse. So nuts were thrown into fires, and the way the nut reacted indicated the temperament of the thrower's marriage to be. And in the north of England, Halloween was actually sometimes called Nutcrack Night or the Oracle of Nuts in honor of this tradition. And it seems likely that using the nuts for divination is a pre-Christian tradition of some kind. We then have mirror magic, which was a favorite among young Victorian women. And one spell involved eating an apple in front of a mirror. And if the spirits were amenable, she would see the reflection of the gentleman she was destined to marry, kind of over her shoulder in the reflection. And then another mirror game was used to discern how many incidents of good fortune would befall a person in the coming year by gazing at the moon's reflection through an open window or door. And this Victorian mirror magic, which seems to be exclusively performed by women, takes on a new level of meaning, at least to me, when we consider archaeological findings from the British Iron Age. So at that time, mirrors were a luxury item, a luxury object, and were sometimes put into women's burials, indicating that they had a very high status in their community. And many archaeologists suggest that these mirrors were used by women for divination and magic, and they were a source of knowledge that only women could command. So being able to use and read the mirror meant that the woman was highly regarded by her tribe and her community. Seances and ghost stories. So in the Victorian era, society became very interested in death and the supernatural. And this is partly why Halloween became such a craze, and there were all these Halloween parties and what have you. And many Victorians were drawn to the notion that the living could communicate with those who passed beyond to another realm. And this obsession with communing with the dead became known as Victorian spiritualism. And this included practices like seances, tarot cards, crystal balls, and Ouija boards, and what have you. And these beliefs and practices became incorporated into those Victorian Halloween parties, as well as ghost stories and the idea of sort of communing with the dead. And the last thing I want to share is about the crystal balls I just mentioned. So they were one of the tools used by the mediums. And, again, this would have been very popular during the Victorian era, but crystal balls are really much older. And they're thought to have been used throughout the medieval period by the Anglo-Saxons. So during the Anglo-Saxon era, the balls were set into wire fastenings and used as symbols of power, class status, and possibly as magic talismans to ward off sickness and evil. And during excavations of medieval graves in Kent, crystal ball amulets were found in several graves of wealthy women and a few men. And interestingly, Merlin from Arthurian legend carried around a crystal ball to perform divination for King Arthur and his knights. So thank you so much for listening. And yeah, I just want to give a moment of acknowledgement for the beauty of these ancestral traditions that we get to connect with as a way of honoring our heritage, as a way of honoring our lineage. In our modern culture and society, we've become very disconnected from our ancestors and disconnected from these rituals and these traditions and folklore and what have you that really hold the memory of our lineage, right? So heritage is one of the ways that we can connect with our ancestors through time. And so it feels really beautiful to have so much beautiful wisdom about Samhain that we can connect with as a way of reconnecting with our ancestors and reweaving these important threads, right, that bring us back to our roots, that bring us back to our sense of belonging and our place in this world and how we connect to the land and what have you. So my prayer is that these traditions and this ancestral wisdom brings you into a deeper sense of your lineage and where you come from and who you are. And may this be a way, like a pathway for you to walk in which you reclaim the deep wisdom and medicine of your lineage. So thank you, everyone, and passing back to you, Stella.
Wow, so much interesting fact there. Thank you so much. Yeah, you've been exploring this for years and years now. Yeah, and I can just tell how much you know, and it's just such a blessing because for me, I really thought so much was lost. And since, meeting you and diving deeper, although not an easy sort of passage into this history, there's so much there, there's really so much there. And yeah, thank you so much. Honestly, it's just so my intention coming into this was like, yeah, wholesome community and learning and what you've shared and what Sam shared. And I could have had a little part all about Calangaeaf and which is also a Christianized version of the ancient pagan traditions where there is overlap. I don't know as much about it as I'd like to to share it, So I'm really on a path towards learning and understanding myself through sharing and bringing this all together in this way. And it's just so beautiful to know, as someone who really wanted to, was seeking from traditions and cultures outside of this land, that there's so much here. And yeah, well, Aaron's just saying farewell, friends, magical blessings. Good luck to you, Aaron. You're going to absolutely, yeah, smash it with your talk to these therapists in the hospitals. And yeah, we're with you there. We're
Thank
with
you
you.
so much.
Thank you
Taking all
so
this magic
much.
with me.
Take the magic with you. Oh, bye, Aaron.
Blessings, everyone. Thank you. See you next
Yeah.
time.
Bye. Um, yeah, and just wow, thank you so much, Tara. So moving on now from these ancient traditions that can definitely inform us today and are really important in terms of insights into our lineage and what they were actually doing, like visualizing and just imagining them coming together and doing these things. We're going to move into Anwin, who's going to be talking about a few things. And so Anwin is a friend of mine, and I got into Anwin's work through her water work because Anwin is a water witch and a water priestess. And I've this year like been able to actually meet you, Anwin, in person. And yeah, Anwen's going to be discussing what it is like today. So Anwen lives in Glastonbury, which I call sort of like the new age spiritual hub of the world, in many senses. I mean, you have got other parts of the world that are like this, but Glastonbury is a very small town that is just like an amalgamation of so many different spiritual cultures in this new world that we do live in, which we can't run away from. And it is so beautiful. And it is definitely one of the most liminal places I've ever been to. Anwen's going to be talking about that and what's going on today, as well as what it's like to be a water priestess and what that really means in this day and age. So, yeah, hello, Anwen. Welcome in.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Oh, thank you so much for being here. And I'm super excited to talk to everyone. I I hope that my voice is coming in okay. I have a bit of a frog in my throat, I guess, or you'll see why. This ties in. And it ties in because I had to scream ritual for about 200 people for about 45 minutes. And I'll tell you why. But because of that, I seem to have lost my voice and I keep getting to a point where I've almost recovered it. And then I seem to go back down into the not having a voice realm. So hopefully it stays for this. So we'll see. But so yes, thank you so much, Stella, for that amazing introduction. I can't believe that it was this year that we met. Are we sure that it was this year and it wasn't last? I feel like I've known you for ages. Um, but let's talk about Samhain here in Glastonbury, or Halloween time here in Glastonbury. So, as Stella has said, Glastonbury is a new age metaphysical hub. There are a small handful of us that are really connected and devoted to the ancestral practices that take place here in Glastonbury. And like Celtic ancestral practices, we've got some Norse ancestral vulva seers, and there are the old ways are alive here in Glastonbury. That's my point. They're just not as flashy or as cool or as sellable as some of the more new age type of things, which is what brings a lot of people here. Um, it is an incredibly liminal space. Um, Currently, where I am sitting, we are on the convergence of two ley lines. The Chalice Well is just right there, the Tor is right there, and the White Spring is right behind me. And these are all incredibly powerful spots um, that, I mean, can connect you to so many different things, the ancestral powers or energies, the fairy realms, the water, the land. Like there's just so much. So when you live in a town like that, there's everything happens. Every temple, church, organization, circle, coven has some sort of event for the Sabbats, for the Wheel of the Year. But one of the really cool things about Glastonbury is because there's so many of us doing these things, a lot of times we come together. Like Beltane, for example, in the whole town comes together to have this huge May Day procession. And it's similar here with Samhain. We have the dragon drummers that do a big parade. I'm sure that you have seen the Chinese dragons where people get inside of them and they dance with them and it's a really long dragon. So there's two ley lines that run through here, and there are the Red Spring and the White Spring, which connect us back to the legend about Merlin and the red and the white dragons. Now, these group of dragon drummers, they have a big parade and they have two dragons and they're huge. They're huge. Like the head of one of the dragons, like it takes a couple of people, right? So they've got a red dragon and a white dragon, and they're very Western dragon looking, right? So they look like they'd have like the horns and more of like a beak, and very Celtic. So in this parade, they do it twice a year, one at Beltane, but for the Samhain one, they have an additional thing, and that is that there's an embodiment of the fairy king of Avalon. So somebody generally dresses up in a kind of ritual theater style where they embody or become the vessel for Gwyn ap Neith, who's the fairy king of Avalon. And he rides in a chariot, and these dragons process down High Street, and it's great fun. Now, we also have a zombie walk that happens, which is also a lot of fun. I've never been to the zombie walk because, in general, I am stuck in this little corner right here. And so my personal ritual, I guess my personal Samhain day went like this, or we did it on the 31st. But before I get into that day and take you through the whole thing, um, we at the White Spring honor the Neo-Pagan Wheel of the Year, which is consists of the four fire festivals and the cross quarters, the equinoxes, the solstices, etc. Um, Now we decide when we're going to have our rituals at the spring, and we tend to do them with the astrological alignments. However, for Samhain, everybody wants the 31st. So we go ahead and we do ritual on the 31st. So let me take you through the day because it starts with a beautiful connection with the Chalice Well. Then I'm going to take you into the White Spring and tell you all about what we do in there. All right, so Um, we had some this year we had some losses within our family, and the Chalice Well, which is right over here, is an ancient spring that is said to have the Holy Grail. It is full of iron, so it is red. Wherever the water flows, it's red. They have a beautiful garden that is open to the public on the high holy days, and for free. And so I headed over there with my family to light some candles for the ancestors and ancestor remembrance. Oh man, mm, I wish I could show you pictures. Um, we'll see how much time I have left after I finished describing it all. So so I headed over there to light candles for the ancestors. My son was particularly sad and grieving this year. So we walked through this beautiful garden up to where the wellhead is. And then lots of people are sitting around meditating. Some people are dropping offerings in. Other people are leaving offerings around the wellhead. Well dressing or wellhead dressing or decorating of the sacred springs and wells is an old tradition that goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it's still done today. And everybody decorates their well or spring a little differently. But the idea is to honor it, to kind of give it this beautiful connection with um, the season, to use seasonal plants and place them around. So we headed up there, and my son had a good cry and got to kind of release right there at the wellhead, which wells are very liminal portals into the other world. We then went over to where the waterfall is, and it's so beautiful because they lit hundreds and hundreds of tea light candles, and it's just dazzling. I'm going to see if I can pull up a picture of this for you. Then we went after we left there, we went over to the White Spring. And here's where I would like to talk about a little bit more. All right, so the White Spring is called the White Spring because it is full of calcium and limestone. Everywhere that it goes, it leaves this kind of sediment, this limestone calcium sediment. It is an old Victorian well house that is built on the top of a sacred spring, or the White Spring. Now, the Glastonbury Tor, which is back here, it's a big hill with the little tower on top. The aquifer, or the water for the White Spring, it originates under here, and then it flows towards the well house. Now, it used to be a beautiful series of fairy dropping pools, this natural sacred site where clean fresh water came from the earth, and it was like a cave entrance into the side of the Tor. Now, there's tons of mythology, folklore, stories of the Glastonbury Tor being a hollow hill. It's also said that this is where the fairy king of Avalon dwells. And on Samhain, he comes up through the top of the Tor and he flies around in something called the Wild Hunt, which is leading a spectral ghost ancestral parade across the sky with the fairies. So when this kind of the Victorians came along and there was this cave entrance into the side of the Tor, and there was this fresh, clean water flowing through it. There just so happened to be a cholera outbreak in town. And the Victorians were like, we have a great idea. We'll destroy this sacred site and build a well house on top. Therefore, the water filled the well house, and we were able to, or the Victorians were able to pull water out for clean and have clean drinking water. Now, that was in 1872. Years go by, falls into disrepair, and all of a sudden, it gets purchased, and early 2000s, it begins being turned into a water temple. The idea was that it used to be a natural sacred site and that it would be reclaimed and turned sacred again. There's a few rules inside of this temple, not many, but a few. One, no photography, no video, no cameras. Two, what was the other rule? What is rule number two that just came that I just forgot? Sorry about that. My brain went somewhere else. So there's those few rules of no videos, no cameras, and I remember what it was. So no video, no camera, no recordings. The other rule is no electricity. Because it's a water temple, they've created basins within this building now. And so people go in and do sacred bathings, sacred immersions. There's shrines everywhere. And the idea is to keep all of that electronic frequency out of it. And so therefore the water doesn't pick up those frequencies. The water doesn't get tainted by this modern electricity or all of our cell phone things. So because of this, no electricity, there's about 150 candles that light this place. So every time it's open, you walk into a Victorian well house that looks like a cave, looks like an ancient building, because also, sorry for this, the building starts out here, and then there is another building up here. So the rest of the cavern is underneath the earth. So it is a cave. We also know that the White Spring was originally a cave. So there's a cave way back there, and then there's this more man-made cave. So about 150 candles are lighting this. Tea lights, dinner candles, stumpies is what we call them, but just absolutely breathtaking. And that's just on a regular Tuesday. But for Samhain this year, we got really creative. So there's a few things that we do for the community during Samhain. Um, One of them is we have a section where you can come and you can write messages to the ancestors. And we usually have a fire pit out in the courtyard. And so right around midnight, before we get ready to close, we go out and we drop the messages that have been written on the papers into the fire with a little prayer and a little blessing. And what this does is so when something is broken, burned, put into a fire, this process happens where it transforms. So when the paper goes into the fire, it becomes this liminal process, and then it is then sent up into the smoke and off into the spirit world. So this is how we deliver the messages from so many people to the ancestors, is by putting them in our ritual fire. The next thing that we do is we also, within the well house itself, have a seasonal shrine. And the day before, the women of the well get together and we go out with our baskets and we wild harvest local plants in season. So we look for dried things, berries, like anything really, vines, like anything that's still living or is kind of thriving within that season. We do some trimmings and some cuttings and we bring them back and we decorate this seasonal altar. This year, we decided to do a couple extra things. Everyone really wanted pumpkins, really wanted to carve pumpkins. Nobody would do a radish or a turnip, not a radish, a turnip, sorry. No one would do a turnip, right? Like one of those big turnips, which is actually traditional. Carving the turnips would have been the traditional way of creating these lanterns. But it's very modern for us to use pumpkins now. So we actually got about 13 pumpkins from the local shop. And when our locals, our regulars would come into the spring during the week, we would send them home with a pumpkin and they carved them and they brought them back. And we had all of these carved jack-o'-lanterns all through the spring. It was so cool. If I could have taken a picture, I would have, but I'm not allowed to, which is so frustrating. But you'll just have to take my word for it. The next thing that we wanted to do is in the center. So when you first walk into the spring, you'll see in the dead center of the spring is a big basin. And that basin has water that comes to about your knees. And this This basin is a place that people come, they do their sacred immersions. I have seen baptisms, I have seen rebirthing rituals, I have seen women crying, I have like holding each other, I've seen ritual in there, I have seen people screaming for hours to release things, like the whole thing, like everything. Like this basin is the cauldron in which all of the magic that the people come into the spring really takes place. Now, Glastonbury is said to be the ancient Isle of Avalon. Although you say that to the wrong scholar and they get a little bit mad at you. But if you drive into Glastonbury, it does have a sign that says, "Welcome to Glastonbury, the ancient Isle of Avalon." So whether or not a scholar, out there reading academic text agrees with us or not, the town believes that it's Avalon. And there's a good case for it. The Tor itself would have been an island sitting in the marshes with the lake water all around. The abundance of apple trees, um, or perhaps the apple trees were planted after we believed it was Avalon, like a little bit of the chicken or the egg, what comes first, right? Um, but either way, no matter what you believe, it is very anchored in here into this landscape that there is a connection with Avalon. We have multiple orchards all around, apple trees in everyone's yard. There's certainly a connection with the apples. Now, apples being very ancestral to Avalon, right? But I also associate the apple with the ancestors, partially because my path is Avalon and I'm here in Avalon, but also because I like to separate the ancestors into three different categories. That's the ancestors of land, and I associate that with the color black and the seed of the apple. Then there's the ancestors of spirit, which I associate with the color white, which is like the meat of the apple. And then there's the ancestors of blood, which I associate with the red skin. And so you get the apple colors corresponding with the ancestral colors and also corresponding with the sacred springs here in Glastonbury, the red, the white, and then we do have another one that a lot of people call the black spring or the black well. Now, all of this being said, Tara had talked about the practice of bobbing for apples. Now, this kind of goes with that, but we're not encouraging kind of the old practice of bobbing apples, but that was kind of the inspiration for this. So we had about 150. Next year, we're going to aim for 300 red apples in this big basin. I mean, this basin is huge, right? This basin can fit like 20 people. So we've got about 150 red apples. Maybe 150 people is an over exaggeration. I think 50. 25. I think that's probably more accurate. More accurate is about 25 people could fit into this basin. And so we had about 150 apples, red apples, in this basin. Now, the way that the water kind of flows in, it started pushing these apples in a spiral. And so all day, and the apples were there on Sunday when I was back on my regular shift. So all day, these apples are swirling around in the magic cauldron in the center of the spring. And it just really brings this beautiful ambiance. Now, I'm the ceremonial custodian for the spring. In the US, custodian has a big that word is much different than it is here. Custodian in the US is like janitor. And though it's true, I do janitorial work, I sweep a lot of floors. Um, the ceremonial custodian is basically like the ceremonialist, the priestess of the place, which we don't use that word, but technically that would be what it is, or the ceremony manager for those of you that might be in the US. Custodian and management are very similar. So I hosted the ritual. It's a community ritual, so we had a local druid come in and do a blessing. We had the former custodian, who's the chaired bard of Glastonbury, come in and read a poem. I had a Thelemic priestess come in and do a ancestral prayer. But the highlight of the night is when I had my 4 quarter collars up on the sides of the basin, chanting this song, or chanting this chant, excuse me. Okay, sorry about that. Chanting this chant um, of the Mill of Magic. So it's long. I won't go through the whole thing. Um, but yes, the Mill of Magic chant. So basically, they're standing on the edge of this big basin. They are chanting the Mill of Magic as the apples are swirling around and around. And then they bring it up high, 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 really high, and then silence, right? So badass. And then you hear this horn blow. A horn blows once, twice, 3 times, and from the back cavern, which is really dark, no light, who should appear but the fairy king of Avalon, Gwen ap Neath. And he gets up on the side of the pool and he delivers his message, all theatrical like, reminding us that we are alive and that we should live. That this is the time of the dead, but to remember that we are alive and that we should live and live well. And then the horn sounds 3 more times and he descends back into the darkness. And then we begin to close the ritual down. We thank the ancestors, we thank the participants, we thank the quarters, the elements, the spirits of place. And then we all head outside for a little bit of mead and fun around the fire pit. Then we kept the spring open till about midnight, which allowed folks to come and go, do their Samhain rituals, their immersions, their blessings, etc. So yeah, that's Samhain at the White Spring and here on Wellhouse Lane. So you can see how we honor the local spirits of place, which are old. They've been here. I mean, the first time Gwyn ap Neath is even mentioned is from the Mabinogi, I believe, which dates back to about the 1200s. So I mean, this is really old ancestral practices that we're bringing into the more modern period. Um, the apples, bobbing for apples, but having it there in the pool. And people have been taking and eating the apples, which is a lot of fun. Or they were at least. I feel like at this point, maybe not so much. So yes, we have these practices that are very modern, but they're rooted in these ancestral practices. So it's such a wonderful way to connect as a human being living in 2024 with these ancient practices and kind of bringing them from the past into the present. To experience in a modern way. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Stella. Thank
Yeah,
you,
oh
everyone.
my goodness. Like, yeah, you're really living in these seasons full on in this modern world. It's like, yeah, it's incredible. Um, yeah, wow. I just looked on my phone. I looked at all the Google photos and it was this year that we met. Did Yeah, I'm pretty sure because like it was the fairy festival the first one I went to in Glastonbury was this year, and I think we'd either met after that or just before it. So yeah, it's only been a year. And since knowing you, I've learned so much about how rich celebration can be at this time and how many people want to be doing this. And it's like you're really lucky to be living in a place and you've been chosen really by the water spirits of that space to come and live there. And yeah, just be surrounded by all of this. And it really is incredible. And I see, throughout my lifetime, so many more areas like this blossoming and people going to places like Glastonbury and leaving Glastonbury and taking those traditions elsewhere. And us, like we are, as you said, that the Fairy King was saying, like, we're freaking alive right now. Like, what are we going to do right now to honor where we are right now, inspired by the traditions of the past? if you have a moment, Anwin, like have a look to see if you can find those photos because I'd love to see some of the photos of those candles because just that vision of the jack-o'-lanterns is so beautiful. And as much as I feel and many of us here feel like a want to belong and a want to remember like the traditions that we have today are real, and us as children experience them as some of the most fond memories of our lives, you know. My son is 2 and he got to experience trick-or-treating for the first time. And just to see these children come up to the door dressed up, and it's just so beautiful. And my prayer is that we as people here being brave, being and brave because we haven't been allowed to speak of this magic for a very long time. I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with the witch hunts, you know, these are our ancestors as well. But let's be brave and bring this wisdom throughout the year into our family life. Like I sort of drop here and there. Like this year, I told my family about Kalangayaf. I told my partner's family about Kalangayaf. I told my nan, and they're a bit like, oh, that's interesting in the history. But it really brings home that these are ancient festivals and they're still here. How can we make them sacred? How can we bring back now coming up to Christmas? How can we make that a little bit more sacred for our family and our friends? You know, what can we do together in community? I'm really grateful to have brought us all together online in this virtual container. I sort of see the laptop as like the communal fire. There's the crystals in the laptop that are allowing us to communicate with each other, you know. Um, yeah, so just like what are we going to do? You know, like this is an invitation from spirit and our ancestors. So like what are we going to do to bring this into our lives and our communities' lives and our family lives once again? And yeah, by the time I'm gone, I hope that this is a lot more prevalent and there are so many less of us saying that we need to belong and that, you know, we are feeling it. And when we're older, the younger generations are like, no, I fricking belong, you know, and this is where we belong and we're making this. Um, yeah, there's
I
just oh yeah, go.
I can screen share 2
Yes.
photos.
Good,
Okay.
good. Let's
All
see.
right. So the first one here is the Chalice Well, and this is the little waterfall section,
They let me oh yes.
all of the candles.
Mm,
Isn't that beautiful? It's amazing.
yes.
And then let me see if I can just click here, see what it'll do. Okay, no, I don't think so. All right, let me open the next one. Give me 2 seconds. So because the number one rule of the White Spring is no photos inside. Unfortunately, I cannot show you the inside. However, I was able to um, get little fairy lights for the garden this year. And so I can show you the garden, the outside of the spring with the fairy lights, which is, give it just a second. And that's the outside. So that's as close as I can get you to the inside of the spring as far as photos go. But I got a lot of little mushrooms and like little fairies and well, yeah, lights and stuff. And these little basins right here on the outside to the right-hand side of the screen, they were built purposefully to look like fairy dropping pools. So yeah. So unfortunately, I can't show you the inside. I'm so sorry, but I can show you the garden, which is not nearly as spectacular.
Oh,
So, but okay, thank you.
yeah, nice. I mean, this call was originally it was going to be for yeah, 8:30, and then less creators were able to speak in the call, so I went to 8. But yeah, we're technically not going overtime. But if anyone does have to leave, like feel free to leave now. And I just wanted to just share quickly a few things that are in the Mystic Cave collection, just to hype them up for the people who haven't been here, and as well, like Sam from the beginning, like your course in there, which is the history of the Pratani people. Pratani is the word that I'm starting to use to describe these lands here. is a word that the ancestors of this land and our lineage from here would understand. The word Celtic, as I'm sure if you've listened to me and Sam talk about anything together at all, will know the word Celtic isn't the best description, but it is a gateway into understanding this history. So yeah, Sam's got her course in there. Um, and then yeah, Anne Wynn's course is on folklore of the sea, which is like going to the oceans. I feel like this conversation and this vibe here has been very like inland and woodland and just, mound and mountain. But you've got the ocean where obviously there are many caves around the ocean. So folklore of the sea. Yeah, there's my workshop, which goes into, I've got two, and it goes into Awen, which is the sacred, divine, creative force that the bards would use of this land. And the bards were the ones from the Iron Age, even up until today in Wales. These were people who were highly revered for their poetic talent and skill. And really, it was spell work, very sacred spell work. And this Awen is something that we're all able to access as divine creators upon this wonderful realm. So then there's a tutorial on Celtic knotwork by Michael Tingle. So yeah, if you guys are into art, and even if you're not, he's really good at yeah, he teaches a lot of tutorials when it comes to drawing, and Celtic knotwork is not easy to understand. So if you've ever wanted to draw in the style of Celtic knotwork, this is a great like beginner's tutorial into understanding like the geometry of how the Celtic knotwork works. And then we've got um let me have a look. So there's a resource guide by Isabel Friend, who is another water wisdom teacher, which is 28 days of ancient esoteric and indigenous water wisdom. So Isabel is from the US, and she has traveled the world talking about and teaching water wisdom, basically. She's also a scientist, and she is like incredibly into like what she knows and understands about water as a goddess, but also H2O and the science and the chemistry and the biology and the physics behind it is just absolutely mind-blowing. And she's got a load of information in that resource book, but it's a guide to take you from the start of the month to the end of the month for a deeper relationship with water. So that's in the Mystic Cave as well. Then there is an audio class by Olivia, which is collecting the bones and reclaiming the wild woman within. I know that this is a very deep journey. So this is like quite a sensitive embodiment for women, reclaiming the bones, reclaiming the ancestral bones. So definitely one to do when you're feeling strong in yourself and you're wanting to reach into that feminine ancestral wisdom. Yeah, not really disclaimer for that one, but it is a very powerful initiation ritual. And then yeah, we've got the Protection Magic and Liminal Magic ebooks by Mickey that I spoke about before. In the Realms Journey, which Aaron the Wizard, who's currently wizarding, speaking to hospital therapists right now. It's basically a month's access pass into his Inner Realms Journey. I really recommend Aaron's work. As something for all of us, but also if you've got anyone in your family that likes gaming or fantasy, if you've got children, brothers or sisters, and you're wanting to bring meditation and magic into their world, it's a really good introduction. Um, and then there is an ancestral self-integration ritual by Victoria, who wasn't able to come today. So Victoria's ancestral self-integration ritual is astrologically aligned for certain dates in November. You don't have to do it then, but she is an astrologer and she has put certain dates in that folder for you to do these ancestral ritual meditations. And Victoria's rituals are really powerful. She's my friend in real life as well, and I've seen her grow her business. Um, she like the growth in the past year from her working on her especially feminine ancestral healing, breaking chains that, like we take on so many unwanted patterns from our ancestors and even our close ancestors. Um, I've really seen Victoria grow through her own methods of working in ritual to really just become her true self, and like what are the patterns that she needs to bring into this life, especially for business with her, man. I mean, her business is flying because of these rituals she's been doing. I've got a 2-year-old, so I haven't really had time to do it, but I'm watching her like, wow, okay, I need to do these rituals in November for sure. And then there's some bonus content which you guys can just sort of explore in your own time. And yeah, that was that from me. So if any of you are here and you don't have the Mystic Cave bundle, like just pop me a message if you do want it. And yeah, you can purchase it as a special one-off, but it's not coming back in this way again. The Mystic Cave will be returning in the spring, but in a very new way, in a very different way. I've actually through this Mystic Cave have had this story unfold where I actually want to create this like cycle throughout the year where it's we go into the cave in the winter with these offerings, and then we come out of the cave. You know, if you do want to join again, you don't have to, but we come out of the cave in the spring and honor the spring ceremony. But that's not with offerings, that's actually more of a convergence of speaking and more of a long time, each individual person who might not be the same people that were in the Mystic Cave this time. Maybe some new people are able to spend a lot longer talking about what they do. And then in the summer, a Mystic Grove, which is coming out of the cave into the summer. And it's this sort of cycle of going into the cave and out of the cave, especially for those of us who don't live close together and are wanting community and are finding it perhaps hard to find it in real life. Well, not real life, this is real, isn't it? But you know what I mean, in person. Because yeah, I have grown a lot of my community and have learned so much from being on the internet. And I think it is like, as much as the internet and social media can be a negative place sometimes, it's really what's brought us all together to spend this time on in between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. Um, yeah, as a little community. So thank you all for being here. And I'm just going to open the space up for the creators to say what you'd like to, and well, whatever you'd like to close the space. But before that, if anyone does have any questions, please go for it there. Or if you have anything you would like to share, um, open up your microphone, unmute your microphone. Yeah, unmute your microphone and go ahead with any questions or anything you've got to say. But if not, that's totally fine.
I just, oh, can you, yeah, I would
Yes.
just like to thank you so much. It's been incredible, and I've learned so much and feel so much so deeply from this. So thank you for doing this, everyone, and being here.
Oh, lush, Sally. Yeah, everyone's going to get a recording of this if you did fancy peeking back into it, in case there's anything you missed or anything you wanted to know a little bit more about. But yeah, thank you for being here.
Hi there. I'm going to speak quietly because we've got a sleeping baby here. I did have a question a while ago about I guess the sort of thinning of the veil. It kind of matches the time of year of that kind of the mists and the weather, and it kind of feels a bit spooky and like has all that magical quality to it. So but I just wonder if anyone could speak to that actual kind of like, is that mirrored in nature? How is that mirrored in nature? What is like, and then in us, like, is the thinning of the veil this kind of magical, mystical quality because of what's going on in nature, and maybe because all of nature and we are nature is like letting go and surrendering, and so that kind of makes our past feel closer. I just wondered if anyone has any thoughts on that, because I feel like it's like a really kind of bit of like a magpie to the jewel, or moth to the flame kind of idea. Oh, the thinning of the veil, but actually, what is going on there? Anybody has any thoughts on that?
Yeah, what you've just said about the weather has really brought something to mind for me. And I'd love for, I feel like you don't have to, Sam, but I feel like you might have something to say about because you spend so much time as an animist out in nature. But the way that I sort of visualize it is because of life is dying, less water is being held within life itself. So the physical nature of our reality is actually quite literally thinning because the water is moving in a different way into a different place. So like what I'm sort of visualizing is as the leaves fall, um, the energy is just moving into a whole new place, and like the seeds are sort of taking in that energy to blossom again, which means for us as conscious beings, everything is just in a different place. I don't know if that makes any sense because that's just how
Mhm.
I sort of see it and feel it and visualize it when I look out there and I just, yeah, visualize what's happening in nature. I feel like there's more room for consciousness that isn't physical to move about.
Right.
But
Yeah,
yeah, Mickey,
that's a
you've got
nice
something to add
way to
as well,
think
yeah.
about. Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah, sort of mirroring a bit of what Stal said, but also like just to talk on the liminal aspect of that. This time of year is a dramatic time for change in regards to nature. I mean, everything's dying off. We as human beings are turning inwards, animals are turning inwards, trees are turning inwards, and it's like when going into the consciousness thing as well, Stal, I think to
Mhm.
go mirror that. I think we spend more time looking inwards with that, so we're able to mirror it outwardsly, and it becomes like a collective consciousness thing where we're aware that the veil's thinning and that everything around us is retreating inwards, so that it reflects and mirrors outwards
Uh-huh.
through that.
Yeah.
That's how I would look at it. I think it sort of mirrors what Stell says, but it also goes with the whole thing of liminality. And this is why I say liminality is so powerful, because it's all about change and transition, and we're very much nature and in ourselves going through a tremendous time of transition and change.
Yeah, it feels shadowy. It feels more shadowy, which is like everyone's looking at their shadow. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sam, did you want to share or are you all right?
Well, obviously, I sort of agree with both you and Mickey, but there's also from a really almost like a practical element that I want to add into it as well, which is like when we go into winter in the northern hemisphere, it's like the everything becomes barren. Everything, the leaves fall off the trees, and it's literally, it's almost like nothing can hide anymore.
Hmm.
Yeah, so there's that almost that kind of metaphorical being able to see more
Hmm.
deeply, because it's almost like the spirits become visible because they've got nowhere to hide. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Nice to hear from you, Sam.
I
I've done one of your courses, so yeah.
remember, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That all really helps. Yeah, there's some really nice wisdoms just shared there that I think will, yeah, help me connect better. Or just, yeah, I just think it's very easy to get caught up with the kind of, ooh, like sort of spirits and this and that, and actually just to actually come back to the practical and what's going on in nature and why is that kind of feeling, why are we all having that feeling, perhaps. Yeah, so that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. It is yeah, it's what I really has have found important on my path that has brought me into my spirituality is that bridging the practical and the practical and the sort of interpretation into it. But yeah, did anyone else have anything you'd like to say? So, Hope has said, thank you so much for bringing so much light to us tonight. The cave has brought so much to me already, and I'm so excited to delve deeper into all it has to offer. So, Hope actually the other day came across a white stag. She's in Lincolnshire, and a white stag appeared in a very special moment after she'd just, I believe, taken Sam's course, and my course was, yeah, something like that anyway. And that was just really phenomenal because for me, I've started doing journeys with people in person and facilitating with work in person with people, and the White Stag has come up a lot this year. And the stag has even for me. So that was really a really nice little synchronicity there with Hope. Sally says, thank you, everyone. I've learned I have to leave to drive her kids to school as it's morning there. Um, yeah, so the creators, did you guys, I think it's only me, Sam, Mickey. Yeah, it's only me. Yeah, people have had to go. So I guess, oh, Mickey says the white stag is a symbol of Anna the Welsh overworld. Yes, it is. It is. I actually had a really beautiful meditation journey recently, and it was the first time I'd been introduced to connect to Gaia. And Gaia appeared to me as as a cactus, basically a really big cactus in a barren landscape. And she just said, she was like, bring them home. And the message I just keep getting is bring them home. And she was just, it was just her as this cactus, like, we need to come home. And it's like, it's just so, there's not even any words for it really, guys, like what we're doing here. And yeah, just to speak on everything that is happening in the world, how wild the world is right now. Um, yeah, the leaves are falling and the seeds are falling and the nuts are falling and they will be planted in the earth and the waters will hold this new life that's going to come through. And that's what it's all about. And yeah, the did anyone at did Sam and Mickey, did you want to say one last thing before I say my last thing and we jump off of the call?
I just want to say that I'm just so pleased that so many people are kind of awakening and wanting to reconnect and reestablish our ancient relationships with all the spirits of the land and everything, and doing it in a way that is sort of specific to our locality and our heritage. I think it's just beautiful. So thank you, everyone.
Mm. Okay, lovely. Yeah, well, I would just invite everybody this, yeah, with your candles, whether they're going to go out now and you're going to light them again, but if you do feel drawn to come to your candle at some point in meditation and honor an ancestor of yours that you know or recognize and speak their name out loud, because this is a tradition of the Welsh tradition, and it dates right back to the Iron Age, where the bards that I was talking about, these yeah, those that worked with the word and the spoken word and language and the breath that animates the sound that comes out of our voice. So one of the main roles of the bards in the Iron Age period was to speak the name and speak the stories of their chieftains, of the leaders of the kingdoms, because they believed that when we speak the name of someone who's passed out loud, it keeps them alive in memory and in song. So that's something I do introduce, well, yeah, invite everyone to do if you feel called to, and if there's not someone within your own lineage that you can think of, anyone, that is within that other world, to honor. So thank you all so much, and I honor you all so much for being here. And yeah, you guys will get a recording next Thursday with this ceremony and gathering. And yeah, awen, everybody. Enjoy your evenings or your days. Okay. Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Bye.
much.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Sarah, I'm going to have to remove you a moment. Hi, Sarah. Cool. Why are you guys laughing?
I don't know. To be fair, I was a little bit nervous while I was speaking. I don't know what happened. I got a bit disjointed, so I've just been like on a weird one, on a bit of a liminal one the whole week.
No, but
Well,
you
it wasn't obvious.
Oh, thank God for that, because I was
Mm-mm.
repeating myself, and I was like, shit, 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 shit.
No, no, no. It was not obvious. I was shitting myself as well, so you know.
Never would have guessed.
Well, we've both got a background in performing arts, so it's like
Oh,
because
there
I
you
have as
go.
well. So it's just like you just yeah. I'm so confident, but I wasn't. I was shitting myself.
Wow.
Uh,
Oh God. I mean, I don't know. I've done this quite a few times recently, so I think it's just sort of like gone in there. But it's like it's always there's I'm always nervous. There's always anticipation because it's like totally unknown. It's like who knows
Mm.
what's gonna go down, you know? Um, yeah. No, thanks, guys. That was amazing. And yeah, awesome. Okay, so the cave is closing.
Good. I can go to sleep now.
You can go to sleep. Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah, your monies will be coming to use yeah, by well, next week at some point. So yeah, thanks guys. And I will let you guys know how much goes into the Blick Mead as well. And also Mickey, actually I'll talk to you, Mickey, about this after another
no,
time. Friday. Friday.
yeah, okay, yeah. I don't know what are we talking about?
Oh,
There we go.
The Blick Mead and the Stonehenge stuff. I've got some cool stuff to share. But I'll
Oh,
see you
right.
on Friday because I'm seeing you on Friday because it's
Yeah, okay.
yeah. All right. Okay, bye guys. Night night.
Bye.
Bye.